Hi, welcome to the pharmaphorum podcast. I'm Eloise McLennan, pharmaphorum's deep dive editor, and today we have something a little bit different for you. On the 27th of March, Bruntwood SciTech invited us to the launch of Manchester's newest life sciences innovation hub, Citylabs 4.0, where I was joined on stage by Bruntwood SciTech's Dr Mackay, Dr Katherine Boylan from MFT, and Dr Gillian Dalgliesh from QIAGEN to discuss innovation in life sciences and the role of Greater Manchester in accelerating research. Please enjoy this special live recording of the pharmaphorum podcast developed in association with Bruntwood SciTech. Thank you everybody for coming back. Lovely to have you here. Welcome to our live pharmaphorum podcast. I'm Eloise McLennan. I'm deep dive editor for pharmaphorum. Today we're going to be talking about innovation in the life sciences and, quite importantly, if you haven't noticed from today's speeches already, the role of Greater Manchester in accelerating research, industry collaboration, and real-world evidence generation. Joining me today, I have Dr. Kath Mackay, who is the Chief Scientific Officer for Bruntwood SciTech. We have Katherine Boylan, Dr. Katherine Boylan, who is Director of Innovation at Manchester University NHS Foundation Trust, or MFT. And we have Gillian Dalgliesh, who is Global Technical Lead from QIAGEN. Welcome, yes, everybody. You also a doctor? I'm so sorry. Dr. Gillian. Doctor does sound like a joke. Now, before we start into the nitty-gritty of the scientific projects that you are all working on, I want to start with a broader question, which is, why Manchester? We've heard a little bit earlier about the benefits of the city can bring, but what makes it such a hub for these collaborative spaces? Kath, if we come from like an infrastructure perspective, what are the key elements that make innovation ecosystems like Citylabs so important to life sciences growth?
Well, I think Manchester has got a fantastic health and life science cluster. The infrastructure, and we're here in part of that today in Citylabs, is fantastic. We've got the right spaces, so laboratories and offices for businesses working in various health and life science disciplines to do their research. So we've got the right infrastructure from a laboratory perspective. We're here today in what is Europe's largest clinical academic campus. So there is the clinical research infrastructure, we've got the patients, we've got the ability to get novel diagnostics and medicines tested. So effectively, you've got the infrastructure all in one place. What I think is really special about Manchester, it's not just the bricks and mortar, it's the actual functional ecosystem that you actually overlay across the property. And that's the bit that it's quite difficult to articulate, but it's the people and the culture. It's the knowledge and the experience. It's the right funding environment. And you can't just make that, you can't just build that. We've spent a lot of time as Bruntwood SciTech not only building the buildings, but developing the right innovation culture. So the collaboration with MFT is really kind of part of that, and I suppose it's the visible part of that. Really fortunate to have a 50-50 joint venture with MFT where we've created Citylabs. And the benefit for companies who want to come in and be part of this functional ecosystem is they're co-located in the cluster with the hospital trust, the expertise, the key opinion leaders, the doctors and the patients. And through the joint venture and the special relationship we have, we can actually start to navigate them through that system so they can get products tested, they can start thinking about how to get regulatory advice, how they can start clinical trials. So I think it's really something quite special that we've developed here today through the people on the podcast, but through the wider scientific community.
It's interesting to hear you talk about the idea of collaboration. Just walking around, it's a lovely day today. Just walking around through all of the buildings and seeing how many people were sitting and talking together over lunch, you could almost hear the innovations and the ideas coming out through those conversations. But Katherine, from the NHS perspective, not just the NHS perspective, but the largest NHS trust in the UK, how does Manchester's healthcare research environment support those cutting-edge clinical studies and industry partnerships?
Thank you. Well, I think Councillor Craig alluded to it earlier, but in Manchester, we like to be a bit different. We like to do things differently. So We had a devolved health and social care system before ICSs were a thing. And we levered that to adopt a one Manchester approach to research and innovation, strategically aligning the different parts of the ecosystem to the core challenges and health inequalities that our communities face. We work closely with our university partners to ensure that all our collaborative work, we're thinking about it jointly around those core objectives, those overarching objectives. We host, as Kath kind of alluded to, one of the largest and most diverse NIHR infrastructure in the country, including from next week, for the first time, a commercial research delivery centre, which will do even more in terms of bringing industry in and engaging with clinicians, both in secondary care and primary care, to meet industry objectives, but most importantly, deliver that research to our patients where they need it, and ultimately, hopefully, the treatments and tests that will work for them. And so if I had to summarise it, I'd say Manchester has all of the necessary parts that you need to drive forward that clinical research, that industry partnership, which a lot of centres do. But what we have is that we line them up and we're bound by a joint kind of spirit of collaboration and a real commitment to drive that change.
I like that term, the spirit of collaboration. We talked about the region and the strengths that provides for you, but let's talk about the infrastructure supporting as well. So Kath, coming back to you, how is Bruntwood SciTech helping to accelerate the journey from research to commercial scale innovation? Because we know that there are so many innovations all across the NHS, all across in labs across the country, but actually getting those into practice, scaling, it's not easy. So can you talk a little bit about how Bruntwood SciTech is helping there?
Well, alongside delivering great workspaces, we have people in our organisation who can support businesses in each of our clusters. We've got something that we call an innovation and growth team, and those are individuals spread across our UK network offering support or curating the right support for those up-and-coming life science and tech businesses. The types of things they're supporting on are talent and skills, so helping to get the right people into companies. When a company comes into a cluster for the first time, they'll be looking for site leads and leaders, but they will also be looking for their workforce across the various different technical specialisms. And the team have got the right partnerships in place to help and support with that. They're also supporting companies getting funded, so bringing in the right organisations to get young businesses investor ready, help them to get public sector grants for the first time. We've also actually convened some of our own funds in this location. We've been part of something called the Greater Manchester and Cheshire Life Science Fund, where we've actually started a life science fund with Greater Manchester Combined Authority and Enterprise Cheshire and Warrington. And that fund is making small investments into life science and health tech businesses. But for companies at that stage, they may be small, but they're incredibly powerful. And it's really attractive. Having a source of seed or early Series A finance is really, really attractive to a company looking for a new location. And I suppose lastly, we've mentioned having the Hospital Trust as a joint venture partner. We've got many, many university, public sector and hospital partnerships across our clusters. And one thing we can do for businesses who choose to join us is really leverage those partnerships, make introductions to the various universities so they can start thinking about collaborations and how they advance their research and their innovations. We can introduce them to the trust so they can start thinking about how they generate evidence. And we can also open up a network of our innovation partners and commercial partners so they can start to think about commercialising their technologies and gaining their very first customers.
And do you have any specific examples of how these spaces, I mean, you can look out the window and you see Citylabs 1, 2, 3, and now 4. Is it 140 companies that are now either here or growing?
Well, I suppose the headline there is over the course of the last year, we've worked to either bring in or expand 140 companies across Manchester and Cheshire, which I think actually, given we're in some quite turbulent times in terms of business funding at the moment, it's a real testament to the product that we're developing, the partnerships we have, and the wider city, that we've been able to actually bring in so many new science and tech companies into the Manchester cluster, or actually support them to the point that not only do they stay with us, but they actually choose to expand with us as well. So it's a great success story for all the partners.
And one of the biggest themes, I think, in healthcare innovation today is how we can work more seamlessly across the NHS with industry and with academia. Katherine, I'd love your take on this. How is MFT facilitating that collaboration between players like QIAGEN and academic researchers?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I mean, I think we cannot underestimate the power of the co-location of commercial companies on the clinical campus here through our partnership with Bruntwood. And obviously, QIAGEN is a wonderful example of that. But more importantly than that, because you can't just bring them, you have to support them as well. So MFT has a dedicated innovation team, and we have specialists who work across the development pipeline to, from research through to implementation, which means that, an industry can kind of plug and play into that support. An industry partner can plug and play into that support, depending on their specific needs at a particular time. We also have specialists who work specifically to support partnerships through our NIHR infrastructure and also more widely. And we formalise our strategic relationships, for example, with QIAGEN, through kind of strategic framework agreements to make sure that, we're very clear on our objectives, our shared objectives, the mutual benefit we want to deliver, and the ways of working in which we're going to do that. And we use that to kind of deliver the wraparound support for companies. And importantly, we work a lot with our researchers, with our clinicians, to make sure that they understand the impact that working with industry can bring as well.
And even with the best of intentions, there are always challenges with bringing innovations into the NHS workflow. Can you talk a little bit about what those challenges are and how you're working to overcome them?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we recognise the NHS can be slow to adopt new innovations, new technologies. And, even on a single trust level in terms of MFT, we're huge. It's so difficult for companies to navigate that, to know who they need to talk to, and often it's various people that they need to talk to work with us to get their innovations, their technologies into practice. So, and this is also exacerbated by the fact that clinical staff and corporate services are facing increasing demands on their time, their capacity, and of course all of this within the climate of an extremely challenging financial situation at the moment. So we recognise this, and at MFT, we're trying to address this. So to this end, next month, we're going to be launching our Innovative Technologies Adoption Programme, or ITAP. And this really aims to streamline that identification, evaluation, and ultimately implementation of new technologies into clinical practice if those technologies deliver proven benefits and meets a trust priority. So we're doing this because we know it's not good enough as it is, and also this is the way that we will drive patient benefit and organisational efficiency. So watch your space. If anyone wants to find out more, do please grab me afterwards.
And Gillian, you've been patiently listening on the end of the stage over there. I'd love to bring you in and get some of your insights, because from the industry side of the conversation, how is being co-located? You're a stone's throw away from some of the biggest hospitals in Manchester. You're a stone's throw away from Citylabs. How has that helped QIAGEN to accelerate its research and commercial applications?
I sit over there in Citylabs too, and we develop molecular diagnostic tests, and in fact we're QIAGEN's Centre of Excellence to develop those tests. And most of our teams there actually work in companion diagnostics development. It's very heavy in lab work. We do an awful lot of lab work to get that idea that is often brought to us by a pharma partner who says, we've got a new drug, we think we're going to need a diagnostics test. Can you make it for us? So our teams start with essentially an idea and a blank page and know that the goal is to get a distributable, regulatory approved test. So we need a lot of people in the lab, and a lot of those are early stage scientists. And, sitting in the northwest, you've got Manchester University, Manchester Metropolitan, then you go over to Liverpool. The academic centres around means there's a lot of early stage graduates who we take on and sort of bring them on in their career. We have students that do placements. So from that very early stage in the university stage, we massively benefit from that. Then you've got the ecosystem here. There's a lot of other businesses in the same sector, and our staff sort of circuits round, And that's great, because if you start early in your career, you're not going to stay somewhere, are you? And it's right and it's good that you come to a company, you decide you want to do higher education, you go back, and then you come back to a company. And all of us that are located here benefit from that, because there's more options for people to move around. And then I've left the best to last, which has been cited with the NHS Trust, who are always immensely helpful to us, because we can take that idea and that blank page and come up with the most elegant scientific solution. But if it doesn't fit in the patient care workflow, and if labs can't use it, then there's no use to that. And actually the clinicians that are based here have freely given their time and consult to us to help us in that journey. We need samples as well from patients. Some things are quite easy to get a hold of, and we don't bother our NHS staff for the easy ones. But our collaborators there at the university have been really helpful for very rare and difficult to source samples. And we often have events and, just options to try and encourage people to sort of mingle and exchange ideas. As you guys mentioned, the co-location can't be understated, because if we open our doors or you open ours to us, then you can just walk over, have a nice event and learn from each other. So yeah, we get immense benefit actually from being located here.
And one of the points of the discussion today is obviously technology. So from QIAGEN's perspective, how important is real-world evidence in driving innovation?
Without real-world evidence, you can't launch a test. I mean, it's a requirement. It's simple. Now, you can get that in different ways, whether it's through a clinical trial or, other means, but it's absolutely essential. And without that, we have nothing.
And a great example of real-world evidence is the series of liver disease research and innovation programs that are being delivered by MFT and its partners. Katherine, can you talk a little bit about these studies and the significance for both the NHS and the wider healthcare landscape?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So for context, Greater Manchester suffers from one of the highest levels of liver disease in the country. And even within Greater Manchester, there are pockets, there's disproportionately high rates between different areas within Greater Manchester. So this is coupled with the fact that liver disease is still traditionally diagnosed late when damage has been done, and it's often not curable. So I think that context is important, right? Because there's no point developing a solution for, a problem that doesn't exist. So we built a consortium between MFT, the university, some large global corporates, including Roche Diagnostics and GE Healthcare, and various SMEs from both Manchester and wider as well. And we successfully bid for £2.5 million from the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund a number of years ago now. So this project utilised real-world data from GP records to proactively identify those patients with one or more risk factors for liver disease. Using that cohort, the clinical and diagnostic data was integrated using AI, using data science, to identify the people at risk of progressive liver disease earlier. So we also coupled this because, again, there needs to be a pathway change, right? Through the establishment of novel community liver assessment clinics, which took that research and also the care associated with it out to the communities, rather than it all being centred around the hospitals. And through this approach, we identified that it was possible to identify those people who are going to progress to advanced liver disease earlier than they would have been otherwise through traditional referrals. So importantly, we partnered with patients in this through the establishment of a patient liver network, with a particular emphasis on populations that have been traditionally underserved through the current care pathways for liver disease. And in terms of the commercial outputs, so a spin-out company has been formed on the back of this work between the university and MFT, and that company will commercialise the diagnostic algorithms that have arisen through the project. So in summary, I think it's just a real great example, actually, of the power of partnership between NHS, academia, commercial sector, different types of commercial organisations, and importantly, partners, because, all of that has driven patient benefit, positive impacts on patient benefit, but also commercial outputs and impact as well.
And another great example of real-world data shaping the future of healthcare is the recently announced Surmount Real UK study on weight loss treatments. Obviously, weight loss treatments have taken over the headlines, both within the healthcare world and outside of it in the past few years. I don't know how many other people could name more than 2 diabetes drugs before last year. I don't think it was dinner table conversation. But Kath, from an infrastructure perspective, how are innovation hubs like Citylabs helping to support these large-scale real-world studies?
Well, I think the example you mentioned is case in point, really. So that particular trial is a collaboration between Health Innovation Manchester, Eli Lilly, the global pharma company, the University of Manchester, and the work's actually being delivered by one of our customers over at Manchester Science Park called Northwest eHealth. They're an organisation that specialises in the novel organisation and delivery of clinical trials with a digital focus. So I think the investment that Eli Lilly are making in this region, because of the organisations, the infrastructure, the can-do nature of those involved, but also the patients, it's the patient population, I suppose the prevalence of obesity is obviously allowed the opportunity to arise. It's obviously a bit of it's not a positive story, but actually the ability of Manchester to organise itself and work with a large pharmaceutical giant is actually fascinating to watch that come together. There is something around the kind of ability of Manchester to be able to work with industry and deliver clinical trials. Industry-led clinical trials are incredibly important. They're actually decreasing across the UK. It's been the subject of numerous kind of government reviews as to why that's happening. There's only one region across the UK where industry-led clinical trials are actually increasing, and that's Greater Manchester. So it's something around the ability of Manchester public sector to work with the private sector, which is obviously very, very striking. And I think what's really interesting is if that research and innovation happens in this geography, then that's where the benefits will be immediately felt. The fact that this real-world evidence study is happening here in this location means that subsector of the population will benefit most immediately, and I think that's incredibly important.
And it's interesting to hear about the idea of collaboration within the proximity of each other as well, that Greater Manchester is the only place that is seemingly thriving with collaboration. Does that improve speed as well? Does it give you that flexibility to, as we've been talking about, go across the road and talk to somebody, have those ideas? As was being discussed earlier, that human connection that can often be left behind if you are so focused on data. If you don't speak to anyone, if we're all on Zoom calls, you might want to get off the call and not spend 10 minutes having a chat by the coffee machine. But those kind of connections, is that helping to facilitate innovation in Manchester as well?
I think so. There's something, we've spoken a lot about co-location and collaboration, that the power of place. And I think really for that innovation to really happen, the knowledge sharing, those chance encounters are very impactful. You can't do that digitally. I think you have to have people coming together in places for that to happen.
And I want to touch on something that Gillian was talking about a moment ago, which is the idea of when we talk about the future of healthcare, we have to talk about the minds that are going to drive that. And Kath, you've written quite a lot, and we spoke in our pre-interview about the talent gap in STEM. So how is Bruntwood SciTech and innovation hubs like this helping to support the next generation of scientists and industry professionals who are going to be driving those ideas forward? And as was discussed earlier, you taking those ideas and turning them into something new that maybe we only understand 3% of the brain now, but they might understand 5% next time.
Well, there are skills gaps in the STEM industries. They not specific to Manchester, but across the UK. We know, for instance, through the work of other groups, that there are gaps with the number of laboratory technicians that companies can recruit to get into laboratories. We know that there are gaps in terms of digital skills and data, and that's obviously going to impact health and life science industries as they become more and more dominated by data and digital techniques. So there's also diversity gap. We're not seeing that diversity. The people coming from different backgrounds and walks of life going into STEM careers, and we do really need to address that in order to actually diversify the talent pool and get the volume of people we need into our research groups and into our companies. And I think the government really does need to think about the sector skills strategy that goes alongside funding in order to, I suppose, address that. I think what we're doing in the meantime, because we have got these ecosystems across the UK and here in Manchester, where we've got our partners, we've got companies, is I suppose we can, and we've got an innovation and growth team who are effectively pulling all this together. There are people in my team who go and teach entrepreneurship in local university courses. We work to actually unlock the company base on our site so we can broker work experience placements. We have careers days on our sites. So really we're thinking about how do we unlock that business base that we have in our clusters and unlock those academic partnerships to really engage with our local communities and think about upskilling those communities, but actually how do we develop that workforce of the future?
That's really interesting. And the idea of visibility as well, that if you are a young person thinking about going into life sciences, but say you don't want to be 3-hour train ride away from your family, there is somewhere that you can see that you think, oh, I could actually get into a career and not have to uproot my life and move. So it's really important, I think, to see where you can go. But Gillian, looking from an industry perspective, as a company involved in life science innovation, how is QIAGEN contributing to reducing that skills gap?
So we're quite involved really in the local community at different levels. You spoke briefly there about the sort of days to go to either schools, universities or colleges, and we often participate in those open days to let people know we're here. We employ people that have got science degrees or, undergrad, postgrad. I actually coordinate a university elective course called The Role of Diagnostics in Medicine. We have 17 lectures delivered across the full spectrum from diagnostic design, development, clinical applicability. We have regulatory experts, because not everyone that does science wants to go in a lab. So we have regulatory, bioinformatics, quality, you name it, from our workforce. And every member of staff is a professional and absolute expert in their field. And they give their time just because they want to, and they feel like they want to give back, and that's such a great thing. Again, the proximity helps immensely, but we do have people fly in from Germany to do the lecture as well. But most of us are close, so we can just walk along, have interaction with the students, and we get something from that as well. It's really nice to just get out and get engaged with the sort of young scientists of the future. We also take on undergraduate summer placement students, not just from Manchester, but other universities in the UK, and PhD placements as well. We can't take too many, it's quite a commitment to do. But, I think we quite pride ourselves. Yeah, there's a skills gap, but we try and do something to help with that. And I already spoke about the early sort of stage scientists, their first job out of university. We spend quite a lot of time just coaching these really intelligent graduates into what it's like to be in the world of work, how to work in teams, how to work. We're a big, multinational sort of presence, and we partner with pharma partners globally. So there's a lot to learn and partnering remotely, dealing with clients externally. So yeah, there's an awful lot to sort of learn and develop, and we do our best to really give back to the local community as much as we can.
Must be quite exciting to see the passion that comes with those sort of sessions as well.
It is. It's really nice to see the students think, oh, I never thought about diagnostics. Maybe not so much post-COVID because, we got really familiar with diagnostics. But before that, people never really thought about that as a career. And we go unashamedly and say, look, we're here, we're going to be taking on graduates. And actually, we've got quite a few people that have come from Manchester, they've maybe done a student placement, they've gone and done a PhD, and then they've actually come back to us. So that is so nice to see, maybe 5, 6, 7 years later, to see those people coming back. It's really nice to see people grow and develop.
We are nearing the end of our session, but we do have time for audience questions. If anybody has a question for either Kath, Katherine or Gillian. Yeah? Oh, I'm going to run. Come to me. If you can tell your name and where you work.
Phil Garville, UK Research Innovation. My question's to Dr. Kath Mackay. So Kath, you used to be Director of Health and Life Sciences and Innovate UK. There's a new CEO being produced at the moment. what would be your ask to him to stimulate the academic clinical industry engagement around research?
Thank you. That's a very enlightening question. I think there's something around, I was at Innovate UK for a number of years, and I think that my advice really would just to be get out there and use the time in the role, that, you know, the early days of the role, to get out and embed yourself in those local communities and really understand what research is happening in the location, what's best in class, you know, what's regionally good, nationally good, and actually internationally significant. And I'd also encourage him to really listen to the business base in those locations, find out actually what are their barriers to collaborating with academics, with the health system, and actually what do they need kind of short-term and long-term in terms of innovation funding.
Any other questions for today? No? No hands? I'll come back up on the stage then. Okay, so just to wrap things up today, we've talked quite a lot about technology, about collaboration, about co-locating and working together. We look towards what's next for innovation. What do you think's next for Manchester in terms of, we heard a little bit about a new place that's opening up. Would you like to speak about that, Kath?
Yeah, no, obviously delighted to think about bringing forward next phases of Citylabs, but also, I mean, we heard earlier today about our green haze development over in Manchester Science Park. £60 million investment, which completes in 2026, and that's going to be the new home of UK Biobank. So UK Biobank is it's a globally significant and the largest health data resource. I'm really fortunate to have worked with UK Research and Innovation, University of Manchester and Biobank to locate them into Green Haze and expand them out of their existing location and bring them into, I suppose, modern day premises. A fantastic asset, not just for Manchester, the UK, but it really is a global asset, and we're very lucky to have them in Manchester. So watch this space.
Katherine, Gillian, what do you think is next for Manchester in terms of innovation?
From an NHS perspective, I think certainly what we're thinking about at the moment is how we drive more of those collaborations, more of those partnerships based on, you know, shared vision, mutual benefit, kind of joint respect. But in particular for us, you know, we're thinking about those national drivers from the NHS 10-year plan. So analog to digital, sickness to prevention, hospital to community. And I think that's framing a lot of our thinking, as it will be across the country, I think, in terms of innovation.
And Gillian, not asking you to give her any trade secrets or anything, but what's next for QIAGEN in Manchester?
No, that's fine. I'm quite happy to talk about what's next in science, maybe not so much in infrastructure. I mentioned before, we work a lot on precision medicine, and for the past 20 odd years that I've worked in precision medicine, that has meant oncology. Okay, oncology is precision medicine, vice versa. Now we're actually seeing pharma partners come and work with us in non-oncology settings. So we're working on Alzheimer's disease diagnostics and other metabolic diseases as well with pharma. So I think we'll see our precision medicine and our diagnostics impact other areas of the life that you've maybe not thought about. And, you know, what are we doing now? We launched a ultra-sensitive digital PCR platform just last year. And really what that can permit is ongoing monitoring of patients. So I would absolutely love to see that used more and more routinely. You know, we're getting pretty good at molecularly characterizing tumours and trying to target treatments. You know, that's kind of in the sort of psyche of the clinicians and the patients even themselves. But, you know, more and more adoption of monitoring and sort of serial treatment, that would be super. So yeah, non-oncology and monitoring would be my two things.
And my last question of this evening, if you could name one thing that other locations could learn from what you're doing here in Manchester, what advice would you give to those areas who are looking to also extend that golden triangle to include hubs in the north, to take advantage of all of the ideas and innovations that you have elsewhere?
Shall I start? Yeah, okay, I'll start at this end.
Let's go the other way down.
So yeah, I used to live in one of those golden triangles, and I have to say the collaboration up here at a personal level, it just can't be compared, honestly. And you know, sometimes industry is seen as maybe like big bad industry, but you never get that up here. People just genuinely take you for who you are and realize we're just all scientists working for the same aim as you. we all want to make a difference in patients' lives. And I think the positive attitude and culture in the Northwest, I don't know how you bottle it and sell it elsewhere. It's really difficult, but actually just having this sort of really good local infrastructure helps immensely as well. I used to live down in Cambridgeshire. It was difficult to do business travel. It was difficult to get anywhere. Here, I literally half an hour at the house, I am ready to get on an airplane. It is superb. So commend the council and all that sort of infrastructure here. And if anywhere in the UK wants to learn something, make life easy for businesses and us as people, because I would never go back down south again as an individual, because life is so much easier here. And then again, the effort that you guys put into supporting us as a business is amazing, and the council as well. It's that person-to-person collaboration and really just thinking, what are we all trying to do here? We're trying to deliver something to patients and, bottle
Katherine?
that and send it around the country.
I'd echo everything Gillian said, obviously. I think, I like to think what we have in Manchester, which maybe they don't have in the Golden Triangle, or which maybe we have more of, is it's quite friendly. People know each other, right? And if you don't know each other, you know somebody who knows that person, right? So I think for other centres outside of the Great South East who are looking to do what Manchester is doing, I think stay friendly, just be open to those opportunities that you might not quite know what they are yet, but if you talk to each other, you will.
We're obviously here to talk about Citylabs 4. We've got other campuses across the UK, and I think there's something actually which is, what should we be doing to join up those centres of excellence across the UK where there is complementarity? I think that they having that kind of helicopter view of strengths of UK cities in terms of their investments, their infrastructure, their health and life science specialisms is, I think it's fascinating. I've got a great view, but actually, how do you get people, notwithstanding all the really hard transport stuff that I'm not going to crack or really attempt to talk to in the last 30 seconds, but actually, how do we get regions and hubs across the UK collaborating where there is, complementarity and the ability to, be more than the sum of the parts? And I think, that's something that we should be looking into across the UK.
I think that's a fantastic note to end on. Thank you, Kath, Katherine and Gillian, for speaking with me today. Thank you all for listening. That is all of our stage bits for today. So enjoy the entertainment, enjoy the food, enjoy the drinks, and thank you so much for joining us.
And so that concludes another episode of the pharmaphorum podcast. You can find more information about this episode, including a download link and information about previous instalments, at pharmaphorum.com/podcasts. The pharmaphorum podcast is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, and pretty much wherever you get your other podcasts. Just search for pharmaphorum and press subscribe. Of course, don't forget to visit our website itself, where you can sign up for daily and weekly news and analysis bulletins. And do follow us as well on X or Twitter and LinkedIn at pharmaphorum. That's all for now. Thank you for listening.